From as early as I can remember, the word wedding was never just a dream in my family. It was a sort of inheritance. Floor. While other little girls in my neighborhood played house or planned their make-believe weddings with lace curtains as veils. Floor. I grew up with my parents reminding me that they were saving for mine. Don't worry, sweetheart, my mom used to say, pressing a kiss to my forehead after a long day at school. Floor. We've got something special set aside for you. When the time comes, you won't have to stress about money. We've got your wedding covered. And Dad would nod in agreement, his voice carrying that certainty children cling to. $60,000, Emily. That's your fund. We started it the year you were born. Floor. You'll walk into marriage with nothing to worry about. We promised you that. It became part of my identity, that invisible chest of gold waiting for me. Not because I was greedy. Floor, but because it meant something: security, stability, and proof that my parents wanted me to have a good start in life. The golden child, the invisible one, of course. Floor. I should have known better than to think that promise would weigh as heavily as my sister Claire's needs. Claire was the golden child, the one who could never be wrong. Floor. Whose achievements were celebrated with parties and praise, whose mistakes were brushed off with excuses. When she failed a class in college, Floor, it was because the professor didn't understand her learning style. When she totaled her first car, Floor, it was old vehicle anyway. And when she wanted to study abroad for a semester in Italy, our parents dipped into their retirement savings to make it happen. Me, Floor, I was the steady one, the invisible one. I kept my grades up. I worked part-time in high school to buy my own clothes. I never asked for extras because I didn't want to be a burden. Floor. Whenever I brought home straight A's, Dad would give a nod and say, "Good job, Emily." Meanwhile, Floor, Claire got a standing ovation for managing a B in a subject she barely studied for. But the wedding fund, that was mine. My one guarantee. Floor, my piece of the pie that couldn't be touched, couldn't be twisted into another sacrifice for Claire. Or so I believed. Floor, living within limits, the promise shaped me in ways I didn't even notice at the time. While my friends splurged on designer purses and weekend trips, I saved. Floor, while others dated carelessly, I was selective. I kept reminding myself, you don't need to rush. You'll have a wedding fund waiting for you. Floor, your parents already took care of that big step. When my now fiancé Daniel and I started dating seriously, I told him about the fund. It wasn't bragging, it was reassurance. Floor, I wanted him to know I wasn't expecting him to shoulder all the financial stress of a wedding alone. Floor, my parents started saving before I was even born. I explained one evening as we sat on his apartment balcony, watching the city lights flicker. Floor, they always said it's mine when the time comes. 60,000, it feels safe, you know. Daniel smiled and squeezed my hand. That's incredible, Emily. Floor. Not the money, though that's amazing. But the fact that they planned that far ahead for you, it shows how much they care. I wanted to believe that too. Floor. The first cracks in the promise, yet there were moments, tiny cracks, that should have warned me. Like when I overheard my mom telling a family friend, "Oh, Claire will need help with a down payment someday." Floor. That's what parents are for. Or when Dad casually mentioned that money can be flexible when family needs it most. I didn't connect the dots. I didn't want to. Floor. I clung to the promise because it was the one area where I wasn't second to Claire. Every birthday, Mom would bring it up again. This is another year closer to your big day. Don't forget, we've got you covered. It was a tradition, a reassurance. A whispered lullaby against the insecurity of always being overshadowed. The dream I carried by the time Daniel proposed to me under a canopy of string lights at the botanical gardens. Floor, the fund wasn't just money in a bank account. It was the foundation of the dream I had carried for years. Floor, I pictured the ceremony in a historic venue with tall windows and chandeliers. I saw myself walking down the aisle in a gown that shimmered softly under the lights. Floor, I imagined my parents beaming, proud to have fulfilled the promise they'd repeated all my life. That night, as Daniel slipped the ring onto my finger, Floor, my first thought wasn't just yes, it was finally. Finally, the promise would be fulfilled. Little did I know, Floor, the promise had already been broken long before I even said yes. The night Daniel and I announced our engagement was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life. Floor, we had invited my parents and Claire to dinner at a cozy little restaurant, the kind with soft music and candles that flickered gently against polished wood tables. Floor. Daniel held my hand the entire time, his thumb brushing across my knuckles as though grounding me in the moment. When we finally revealed the news, his eyes sparkling as he said, "Emily said yes." The table erupted in congratulations. Mom teared up instantly, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Dad raised his glass with a broad smile. Claire clapped. Floor, though her expression was more of surprise than joy. Wow, she said, her voice teetering between disbelief and faint annoyance. Floor, I didn't think you'd beat me to the altar? It was an odd comment, but I brushed it aside. I was too wrapped in the happiness of the moment to let it stick. Floor, the conversation that changed everything. Later that week, I sat at my parents' kitchen table, sipping coffee while flipping through bridal magazines. Floor, my heart swelled as I finally said the words I'd been holding onto for years. Floor. So, I guess it's time to talk about the wedding fund. The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice through the air. Floor, Mom's hand froze mid-stir as she swirled sugar into her coffee. Dad cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. About that? He said slowly, setting his mug down with deliberate care. Flo, we need to have a conversation. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? Mom sighed as though she'd been dreading this moment. Sweetheart, Floor, you know your father and I love you. We want the best for you. Of course, I said cautiously, and that's why you saved the fund. 60,000, right? Floor, for the wedding? Dad winced. That tiny flinch was the crack that let the truth seep out. There isn't a fund anymore, he admitted. The shattering truth at first, I laughed. Floor, a hollow, awkward sound. Very funny, Dad. Seriously though, what's the process for me to access it? Do you transfer it or? Mom reached across the table, Floor, her hand brushing mine, but her eyes held a softness that felt almost rehearsed. Emily, we gave the money to Claire. The words didn't compute. They hung in the air, absurd. Floor, impossible. What? My voice was barely a whisper. She and Mark needed help with the down payment for their house. Dad said, his tone almost defensive. Floor, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The house is perfect for raising a family. We couldn't let it slip through their fingers. My heart thundered in my chest, Floor, each beat echoing like a drum of betrayal. You gave my wedding fund to Claire? Floor, the money you promised me my entire life. She needed it more than you. Mom insisted gently, as if that softened the cruelty. You're marrying Daniel. He has a good job. You two will be fine. But Claire, she and Mark were struggling. They deserved a chance. The gaslighting, I stared at them, my hands trembling against the table. Floor. You've been telling me since I was a child that money was mine. You told me every year, every birthday that I'd be taken care of. How could you? Emily? Don't be dramatic. Dad cut in sharply. It's just money. Love is what matters at a wedding, not how much you spend. I choked on a bitter laugh. Floor. Easy for you to say when you've been promising me 60,000 for 28 years. Claire, who had been listening quietly from the doorway, finally stepped in. Floor, her arms crossed. God, Emily, are you really going to make this about you? You're getting married. You should be happy. Why does it matter if the wedding isn't some huge fairy tale? Be grateful you even have Daniel. Be grateful. That was the phrase that broke me. Floor, I am grateful for Daniel. I shot back, my voice shaking. But I'm not grateful for being lied to my entire life. That money wasn't a bonus. It was a promise. Floor, a promise you took from me and handed to her like I don't even matter. Mom's expression hardened. We did what was best for the family. Stop acting selfish, Floor. Claire will have children soon. Don't you want your nieces and nephews to grow up in a good home? The knife twisted deeper. Not only had they stolen from me, Floor, they were painting me as the villain for daring to protest. The aftermath, I left that day with tears burning in my eyes. Floor, my engagement ring glinting mockingly on my finger, as if to remind me that this was supposed to be joyful. Daniel found me sitting in my car in their driveway, Floor, clutching the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. They gave it to Claire. I whispered when he opened the door and sat beside me. All of it. Every penny. Floor. They called me selfish for being upset. His jaw clenched, fury darkening his features. Emily, I don't even know what to say. Floor. That's unbelievable. It's worse than unbelievable, I murmured, tears spilling down my cheeks. It's betrayal. At that moment, something inside me shifted. Floor. The illusion of family loyalty shattered. I realized with cold clarity that I had spent my whole life waiting for a promise that was never meant to be kept. And as I stared out the windshield at the house I had once called home, a quiet, simmering resolve began to form. Floor. If they thought I would swallow this betrayal and still play the obedient daughter at the wedding they refused to fund, Floor, they were gravely mistaken. The days after the betrayal were a blur. At first I cried hot, Floor. Aching tears that stained my pillow and blurred the future I had been so carefully sketching. My wedding dress Pinterest board suddenly felt mocking. Floor, every note in my planning binder a reminder of promises turned to ashes. But then something shifted. I looked at Daniel, steady, loyal, Floor, and furious on my behalf. and realized something important. I didn't need my parents' money. I never had. What I needed was respect. And if they wouldn't give me that, Floor, I would build a life without it. The decision one evening, Daniel and I sat across from each other at our small kitchen table, dinner plates pushed aside. He reached for my hand. Floor, his voice calm but resolute. Emily, listen, we can do this ourselves. It doesn't need to be a $60,000 spectacle. It just needs to be us, you and me, surrounded by people who actually support us. His words sank into me like sunlight breaking through clouds. He was right, Floor. Why would I want my wedding to be some grand display for the same people who had betrayed me? Why would I let them sit in the front row, pretending to beam with pride, Floor, when they had taken the very foundation of that dream? No, this wedding wasn't theirs anymore, it was mine. Ours, Floor. And the sweetest form of revenge would be showing them that I didn't need them, or their money, to create something beautiful. The plan, we downsized everything. Instead of a grand ballroom venue that cost more than a year's rent, we found a charming vineyard an hour outside the city. Rows of grapevines rolled across golden hills, the sunset painting everything in amber and rose. Instead of inviting 200 distant relatives and my parents' business associates, Floor, we invited 50 of our closest friends and chosen family, people who had earned the right to witness our vows. The result wasn't less, it was more intimate, more meaningful. Floor, more ours. I used my own savings, the money I had quietly stashed away from years of working extra shifts and cutting corners. Daniel pitched in without hesitation. Together, Floor, we built something pure, untarnished by guilt or manipulation. The guest list. When my parents asked about the wedding details, I was polite but vague. Mom called one afternoon, her voice sharp. Emily, your father and I still don't have the date. We need to start planning our outfits, the rehearsal dinner, the guest list. I cut her off. Floor, my voice calm, almost cold. You won't need to plan. You're not invited. Silence. A stunned, heavy silence that felt like the first breath of freedom. What? She gasped. Floor, you heard me. You stole my wedding fund, and you called me selfish for protesting. I won't reward that betrayal with front row seats to the happiest day of my life. Floor, this wedding is about love, not lies. Her outrage came in waves, accusations, guilt trips, even threats of family estrangement. But for once I didn't bend. Floor, Claire called me too, dripping with fox innocence. Are you seriously cutting out Mom and Dad over money? You're ruining the family. I laughed bitterly. No, Claire. Floor, they ruined the family the day they gave my future to you and told me to be grateful. Enjoy your house. Floor, you won't be enjoying my wedding. The wedding that was truly mine. The day finally arrived and it was perfect. The vineyard glowed in the late afternoon light. Floor, the air filled with the faint sweetness of ripening grapes. My dress shimmered softly as I walked down the aisle, Daniel's eyes never leaving mine. Floor, every face that surrounded us belonged to someone who had supported us, loved us, chosen us. Not a single false smile. Not a single hidden dagger. And the beauty of it all. Floor, my parents and Claire had to watch from afar, hearing about it secondhand as pictures filled social media feeds. The photos captured everything, the warmth, the laughter, Floor, the authenticity. We didn't need chandeliers or marble halls. We had joy, we had freedom. And for the first time in my life, Floor, I felt like I was the golden one, not because of their approval, but because I had built something on my own terms. The whisper of revenge that night, Floor, as Daniel and I danced under the stars, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. I saw the photos. It looked nice, Floor, but you'll regret shutting out your family. I stared at the screen, a small smile tugging at my lips. No, I wouldn't regret it, Floor. Not when the sweetest revenge was knowing that they weren't needed. That their betrayal had only made me stronger. I slipped my phone into my clutch, leaned into Daniel's chest, Floor, and let the music carry me, because my wedding hadn't been stolen. It had been reclaimed. Months passed after the vineyard wedding, Floor, and life unfolded in a way that felt almost surreal. Daniel and I settled into our new rhythm as husband and wife, Sunday mornings making pancakes in our little kitchen, Floor, weekday evenings curled up with wine and laughter. Without the weight of family manipulation pressing on me, everything seemed lighter. Floor, I was no longer living under promises made and broken, I was free. But life has a way of balancing scales, and the balance began shifting sooner than I expected. Floor, cracks in the dream home, Claire's dream house, the one my wedding fund had bought, began unraveling almost immediately. The property taxes were higher than she anticipated. The mortgage payments stretched thin across their paychecks. Repairs cropped up, leaky pipes, a cracked foundation, a roof that needed replacing. At first, Floor, she posted on social media about adulting struggles, framing it as something almost glamorous. Photos of her in paint-splattered jeans with captions like "New homeowners hustle." But as months rolled by, her updates grew scarce. Behind closed doors, her finances were collapsing. Mark's business venture failed. Credit cards piled up with unpaid bills. Floor. And when Claire's designer handbag addiction didn't slow down, their dream home became more of a nightmare. Flo, the knock on my door. It was a rainy Tuesday when the past came knocking, literally. I opened the door to find my parents on the porch, umbrellas dripping, Floor, their faces tight with discomfort. Mom clutched her handbag like it was a lifeline while Dad shifted awkwardly, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Emily. Mom began. Floor, her voice overly sweet. Can we come in? We need to talk. Daniel joined me at the door, his arm protectively at my back. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Floor. They sat at our kitchen table, the same one where Daniel and I had once planned our wedding in secret. The same one where I had learned what resilience tasted like. Flo, we need your help, Dad finally said, his voice heavy. Claire and Mark are in trouble. The house, they're close to losing it. Floor. We thought maybe you and Daniel could step in, just temporarily. You're doing so well, and families should support each other. I stared at them. Floor, bitter laugh bubbling in my chest. You want me to save the house you stole my wedding for? The sweetest revenge. Mom winced, trying to smile. Don't say it like that, Floor, sweetheart. It was all for family. We know you were upset, but this is different. This is serious. Different. My voice rose, sharp with years of swallowed pain. Floor, you stole from me, humiliated me, called me selfish, and now you want me to bail you out? Floor, to fix the mess you created when you handed over my future to Claire. Dad's jaw tightened. Emily, don't be petty. Be practical. Floor. Claire has children to think about. And there it was again, that invisible dagger. Not only had they stolen from me, Floor, but they were now weaponizing the idea of future grandchildren against me. I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded calmly in my lap, though my heart thundered with the weight of the moment. You once told me not to be selfish, to let Claire have what I'd been promised. So let me return the lesson. I paused, Floor, letting the silence stretch, watching their faces twist with dawning realization. I will not give you a dime. Not for Claire. Not for the house. Not for anything. Floor. You made your choice and now you can live with it. The fallout, the silence that followed was thick, broken only by the patter of rain against the windows. Mom's lips trembled, Floor, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You'll regret this, Emily. Family is everything. No, I said softly but firmly. Respect is everything. Floor, and you lost mine the day you sold me out. Daniel placed his hand over mine, steady and sure. His presence was my anchor, Floor. My reminder that I was no longer the little girl begging for scraps of approval. My parents left that night without another word. Their umbrellas disappeared into the storm, Floor, and with them, the last shred of guilt I carried. The full circle. Months later, I heard through distant relatives that Claire and Mark had indeed lost the house. Foreclosure. They moved into a cramped rental, their social media posts dwindling into silence. Meanwhile, Daniel and I thrived. We saved diligently, eventually buying our own home. Modest, Floor, but ours. Paid for with our own sweat, our own planning, our own love. Every time I walked through our doorway, I felt a quiet, satisfying triumph. Floor. The revenge wasn't in their downfall alone. It was in the fact that I didn't need to destroy them to win. Floor. All I needed was to step out of the shadow of their betrayal and build something stronger. And I did. The final lesson, looking back, the 60,000 wasn't really the loss. The real loss was theirs. Their integrity, their relationship with me, their chance to be part of my happiest days. My sweetest revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was peace, Floor. It was freedom. It was showing them and myself that I could rise without them, that I could build a life untouched by their favoritism and manipulation. The tables had turned, Floor. I wasn't the selfish daughter anymore. I was the daughter who learned the hardest lesson. Sometimes family doesn't have your back. But sometimes, Floor, losing them is the best gift they'll ever give you.